All right, another day, guys. I think I might just do another. I might just do a second part of that, like of American performance bargains again. Like I think some other cars that I just I didn't get to possibly mention in that first video or first part of that video would be because I think in that video I was mostly mentioning Grand Sports from the Corvettes or anything with the Z51s. If it's from the Camaro, it's probably as long as it has. If it's a non-ZL1, the SS1 with the 1LE packages, then obviously from the Mustang world, probably the Mach 1s because all of those have some form of upgrade to their cooling system. Is to me what should be one of the more important things. Obviously, engine and transmission, they got whatever needed to be done. Engines were already stout. Transmissions were pretty stout. Just cooling. I think now the one car I think as well that should be mentioned in that list, which I guess depending on where you live can be fairly cheap, right? Or depending on your budget, I guess. Like to me, some things can be still expensive, but for what you're getting at this point, it can be considered a bargain. Like for example, a Cadillac ATS-V. So I was gonna I know, the CTS-V does exist. I get that, and you have both versions. You have the V2s and the V3s. You had the LSA powered ones, which were awesome, and you have the LT4 Cadillacs, which are still awesome, right? Like they're great cars. Obviously, they all have their issues. Well, not the LSAs, the LT platforms from the C7s, and those versions of the V3 CTSs. Those ones obviously had their concerns with AFM, right? They would just go. When it works, it's great. It's a similar thing to how I think German cars are. Like whenever a German car is actually working as intended, that is a great car. When stuff goes bad, oh my lord, it is some of the most outrageous thing, and it's never cheap, obviously. Like especially this being in a supercharged LT4. This is basically I was gonna try to compare it. Yeah, I was gonna say this is basically just a different version of the LS9, right? It might be crazy to say, but that's what I think the LT4 is. You got a 6.2 liter. They're both supercharged. They're literally 2 horsepower difference between each other, right? So I'm like, this is about as close as it's gonna get. That was cool. To the LS9s. Oh, there's a CA. Hello, good morning. I think the ATS-V would be a solid option. I haven't really seen anything bad about that engine, and if you don't know what engine I'm talking about, you can try and look up the LF4. That is the code name for that V6. And no, this is I know V6 is from GM. I've always had their little timing chain concerns. I get that. That's just kind of the way it's been. But also it's from people neglecting certain things. It's not that hard to get certain things done, right? It should not be. Whether you do it yourself or whether you go to someone. But I think ATS-Vs are pretty, I would like to say, underrated vehicles, right? I would like to say that is not really a car that, when you talk about performance, anyone would talk about. Those ATS-Vs are quick, dude. They're quick, right? You got twin turbo V6 with either a TR6060 or a 8L90, right? So that's the transmissions options. I don't really care what you choose between the two. I'm gonna say that's your money. I don't, whatever one you think is more fun. The nice thing about those LF4s, right, which a lot of GM vehicles, especially the performance cars, besides your ZR1s, seem to always have AFM. LF4 is one of the V6s that actually don't. And yes, the V6s, the regular versions, have AFM as well. Right? They do have a form of AFM. I think those ones work a little bit better than the pushrod ones, but still, AFM, if you don't like AFM, keep that in mind. Okay. For LF4, right, that is a pure, about as pure a V6 as it's ever going to get. Right? There's no AFM on it. I think it pretty much has, it's direct injected, variable valve timing, all that good stuff. That thing makes the ATS-V versions have made 464 horsepower, right? And I get that they do have the new one for CT4 Black Wings, and those have the same engine, right? Literally the exact same engine. But there's one difference from what I can remember. There's only one real difference between the two, besides the little 8 horsepower bump, right, from the engine itself. The turbos are not made from the same company. Okay. That's the way it is. They're not the same turbo. Do they make the same, do they do the same thing, I guess? Yes. Obviously, they're literally pretty much placed in the same spot. It's just who they're made from, right? ATS-Vs were made by Mitsubishi. The turbos off the ATS-V came from Mitsubishi's. The same company. It's, I think, Mitsubishi, it's like MHD, like Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, or MHI is what it is, that one. And obviously they're the company that makes the turbos for the Evos and other things. Whatever needed a turbo, they go to that one, okay? And that is a company that is very good at making turbos. That's kind of, their thing. It's what they do. So, and the tolerances are quite good, right? Like, they are probably some of the best turbos you're ever going to see. I'm not going to say they're bulletproof, right? I'm like, everything has a breaking point. It's just a matter of how far you push it. But those turbos are, from anything I've seen, are quite good, right? They are very good. The ATS-V has those. The CT4Vs have the Borg & Warner ones, which is pretty much, I think, the standard for most other companies that do not use Mitsubishi turbos. Like, I think the German ones, they use Borg & Warners. So I think they went for like the Audi route of some sort, that turbo aspect, which I'm like, okay, and they're fine, right? I'm not gonna, for me, I like the ATS-V just because of them being made by Mitsubishi, because one, I like Mitsubishis, at least the Evos. And then the other thing is if you want to tune it, right? Remember, the transmissions options on these things are already strong, right? They're already rated to handle way more torque than most people would ever imagine, right? So, ATS-Vs, the tunability, that's the one thing, right? This is probably, for anyone who's good at tuning, that is probably a tuner's dream. Okay, that is a dream right there, because from factory, the ECU is already unlocked. You are able to tune it right off the gate, so you could literally buy it off the lot. And it's probably not under warranty at this point, but you could literally buy it, go to whoever you want it to get tuned, or do it yourself, and go. Right, those things are tunable off the gate. There's nothing super crazy about breaking into this, that, or the other, like the way the new Mustangs and C8s are. No, this one you go right into it, and it responds, and you go ahead and tune whatever you need to do. And keep in mind, remember, this car has VVT. It has turbos. So they could start turbo graphing. They could start literally messing with ignition timing based off the variable valve timing. Right? It just works, right? They can put the power where they need it. Right? Put a certain amount down low, put a certain amount in the mid-range, and maybe even top end if you really, really love doing roll racing on a daily basis. Or just track racing. Even track racing, that thing is actually pretty good, right? It is not the heaviest car in the world. Is it still relatively heavy? Sure, right? It's a 37 to 3,800 pound car. I'll probably say 3,800 more than likely. That's kind of where it mostly is. Yeah, but even then, right? It's got MagneRide, okay? It's got MagneRide, which this version of the MagneRide should be one of the better versions. Right? This is basically what, the third generation, I guess, of MagneRide from Chevy, or from GM. So, yeah, I'm like, it just works, okay? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say that MagneRide takes forever or is cheap to fix. It's not, okay? If you don't like it and you want to do some sort of delete kit, I'm sure there is somebody, because they've done it before for previous cars. I don't know much about ATS-Vs, but I'm sure someone at this point, with that car being about the oldest version of that car being 9 years old now, I'm pretty sure at this point someone has come out with a MagneRide delete, right? If you like it and you can pay for it, I'd say keep it, you know? MagneRide, obviously, it's supposed to be built for comfort, which, from one of my other buddies who has a Camaro with MagneRide, because he has a 1LE, which that one too, though, I don't think they're standard on the Camaro 1LEs, but his Camaro has MagneRide. And so I think they might come standard on those cars, especially once you hit 1LE. And he says that MagneRide works great, right? It makes that car more comfortable than it really should be. So I'm like, that's good to hear. I'm glad that the MagneRide is actually doing its job. But yeah, ATS-Vs, and those things, like, they are quick, okay? I'm like, remember, this has more, so this is literally in terms of power. I get needs turbos to do that, but it's got the power, right? It has more power than an LT1. LT1s are rated at 455. Those things are rated at 464. Some guys have dyno to bone stock ATS-V, and depending on the dyno you're on, the lowest one I think was like 398. So I'm like, range it somewhere pretty close to 400 wheel, or right at it, right? That's accounting all drivetrain loss and transmission and whatnot. So the manual ones probably have less in terms of less drivetrain loss. So that one might actually be straight up over 400 wheel. But it's just the way it works for those cars. And I haven't really seen anything crazy about them, right? Obviously, I think a lot of people who buy like those type of cars, it seems to be a very like GM thing, right? Every time you see a Corvette or some form of some sort of V platform Cadillac, the first person you think of that's driving that car is some retired guy, and it seems to never fail. So, plus side is that those cars, if whoever that driver is, whether they're like that, right, they just don't drive it hard. Most people, they take it as cruisers. They're kind of like me with my car. I'm like, this is the only, like my C5, I'm like, this is my only car. So I'm like, yes, I drive it like a grandpa. You say, I'm not ashamed of that, right? If I had another car, different story. But if this is the only car that I have, I'd like to be able to go to work, you know? Like, I still work a normal job, so I'd like to be able to go to work. Once I get enough money to get a different car, different story. This car is probably going to get all the things that I've obviously looked up and wanted to give this car, but never got to because of that fact. right? So yes, I'm like, but ATS-Vs, stout. Dude, I would, yes. I'm like, if you want to go full send on that one, I would love to see that. You know, I would like to own it. Obviously, like there's a lot of things I'd like to own. ATS-V is for sure one of them, and they make a 4-door version of that too, which the weight between the 4-door and 2-door is quite minimal. So for me, it wouldn't really matter. I think the only nice thing for me about having that 4-door version is just from a practicality standpoint, right? Because the 2-door it shares the same chassis as it's the Alpha chassis, so it has the same thing as like the Camaros and all that. And yes, the seating, if you get the 2-door, the seating of that is very similar to a Camaro. It's a very tight space. At that point, there's no point. If you have the 2-door, there's literally no point of having the back seats over there for those cars. Like, you can barely fit anybody in there, unless you're like pretty small. Unless you're a pretty small or short person, then you might be fine. But you know, not everyone is like that. If you get the 4-door, obviously you get the room. I'm not gonna say this thing has the most roomy. No, that's not the craziest in terms of leg room, but it's less of a hassle trying to get, if you're trying to travel with more than just 2 people in the car. It's less of a hassle, which is nice, right? And if you're worried about certain things, like for example, maybe insurance, some people worry about insurance, you pay less on the 4-door, right? It's a V6, it has 4 doors, so it's a bit different on that side. 2 doors, you'd more than likely pay more on 2 doors on it, because it's considered, you know, a sports car and whatnot. So that's just the way it goes for those cars. So the only other ones that I would say could be an interesting one, but even though it's harder to track them, would be any of the SRT8 Dodges. Specifically the ones, if you got to look it up, if it has a 6.1 liter, that does not, and I repeat, does not have MDS. Okay, that is a pure V8. That's basically one of my favorite Hemis, right? Or if not my favorite, like NA Hemi. I'm like, that thing makes 425 as a 6.1. It's great, right? That was basically what was supposed to compete for a while. That was basically the Camaro, the LS3 Camaro's competition. So if there's another one, there's some other cars for sure from the American side. You could try, if you could find one in decent shape, even though it does not have an American engine, right? Just sold by an American manufacturer. The Chrysler Crossfires, the SRT6 Crossfires. From what I've seen and heard, they said those engines were 100% underrated, right? And when I say underrated, I mean underrated by Chrysler. Like, they lied pretty much about how much power this engine actually has. That thing has more, right? I think it was rated at like 325, but in reality, it actually probably had closer to 350, and sometimes even more. So I'm like, because these guys were making like that 320 whatever, they were making that 2 to wheel. So I'm like, that's not possible, okay? With drivetrain loss, it's just not gonna happen. So but yeah, I would say those cars are for sure, I would say, something to look at from the American side. And say, is there some other American cars? Sure, you know, I'm an open book. I like seeing what the present and the past has made for American cars. I know they had the LF3s off the CTS-V Sports. They have the LF3s, but the only problem with that is that compared to the ATS-V, is like it makes less power and weighs more. Now, does it cost less to buy one of those? Yes. Is it expensive no matter what to maintain either vehicle? Yes. Right, yes. So do not think just because they don't have AFN does not mean they're still not, they're just cheap just like that. No, right? Especially the LF4, that thing has titanium connecting rods, right? Thing is the first car since, at the time, it was the first car since the Z06 C6 to have titanium in the engine, right? It in some sort of titanium component. And it had titanium connecting rods. I'm like, so just for lightweightness. So, like, yeah, it's not a cheap thing, right? If you can afford it, if you got that type of money to do that, I would say go for it, right? You live your life. Some people think it's a waste of money, but hey, you know, if you like having fun with certain cars, with whatever car it is you want, you know. I like GM vehicles, but I'm not gonna just say that's the only vehicle I'm ever gonna want to own, right? I like other cars too. I like second gen Mustangs. Those are my favorite Mustangs. Say, I'm like, I know that's not the most powerful one of them all, but I'm like, I just like how those ones were, right? They just worked. And that's all I want. I just want it to just work. Then you've got ATS-Vs. I'd like those. And I would like any of the LSA powered GM vehicles between the three and that's sold in the States. You know, you've got your Camaros and both versions of the CTS-V fire. Corvettes. I would say, sure. Like, you know, I wouldn't be going away from that. I'm like, I own one now, right? You know, I drive a C5. So that wouldn't be much of an issue now. But I think, I know, I'd like to try some other cars too, for sure. Like even Mercedes, Mercedes with their E55 AMGs and those M113K engines, great, you know. But from the American standpoint, I think, yeah, another one that's a great bang for buck would be the ATS-V. So, but I'm about to head to work now. It's a little bit chilly outside. I think it's like, I don't know, 45. I don't know, it's about 7:30 right now. So, but all right though. You all have a great day. I'm out.